Hey guys, thanks for coming back to my channel. It's good to see you. It's Kevin here, and I've got my winter top 10 fragrances for 2024. Of course, a few weeks ago, I did my top vanilla and ambers for the winter season. Kind of separated things like that because they were just running over in my top 10 winter fragrances. So I had so many that kind of centered around vanilla and amber. I figured why not just kind of do a separate video with those and then do another video just kind of focusing on other winter top favorites of mine that didn't really center around vanilla or amber. And so that's what this video is going to be. It's not going to be a ranked list or anything like that, but my top three at the end of the video. Those three will be ranked. Everything else, just, 7 other fragrances that I put into my top 10 winter fragrances for 2024. And actually the first one that I'm going to start off this list with should have, and technically could have been, should have actually been in my winter ambers and vanillas, but I forgot to put it in there. So I'm going to sneak it into this list. Yeah, it absolutely should have been in that list. So that's why it's going to make it into this one instead. And that's what we're going to start this list off with. And it's this one right here. It's from the Harmonist, and that is Hypnotizing Fire, the Eau de Parfum. Of course, they have the Parfum. This is the Eau de Parfum, which I prefer ever so slightly over the Parfum. Now, this is a fragrance that I'm not really sure why. In this house in general, the Harmonist, it just kind of caught fire in 2023 for whatever reason. And I'm in a group chat on Facebook with a few of my other friends in this hobby, in the fragrance community. And we were kind of talking about that recently. Why has Hypnotizing Fire, it just caught all of this attention here recently, all of this momentum and hype? And I think this originally came out in 2016, I want to say. The Eau de Parfum did. But for whatever reason, 2023 was Hypnotizing Fire's year. I mean, it just really broke out this past year. This is an amazing candied vanilla fragrance. Candied, almost ambery, but I would say more vanilla. A candied kind of sugary rose a little bit, although you probably wouldn't smell this and think, oh, that's a rose fragrance. I don't really think you would, even though rose is one of those notes that's kind of listed on the top end of things on Fragrantica, but I wouldn't smell this and think it's an overly floral fragrance. No, it smells more sugary, candied vanilla. Now, it's listed as having a good bit of spicy notes in the top, cloves, pimento. I think pepper tree is another note in this one, but I don't smell this and think spicy. No, I smell this and think more candied. There is the note of praline in this. Of course, there's also the note of vanilla. It does have a little bit of an ambery touch to it as well. It's very comforting. It's very sweet. The floral in this does kind of come across as just the rest of the fragrance does. And that's kind of what you're picking up here with the rose. Not necessarily a real rose floral heavy fragrance though. But there is also some patchouli in this one too. After that candied vibe of the opening kind of subsides a little bit. Not enough to make it more dirty than sweet, but it is very noticeable. A Papanax is actually another note in this as well. So that's going to kind of lend to a little bit of the vanilla feel in this. Maybe even a little bit of a resinous feel to it as well. But yeah, Hypnotizing Fire, the Eau de Parfum, starts off this winter top 10. Okay, and the next one in this winter top 10 is this one right here. I could have gone with either the Extrait or the Eau de Parfum. I ended up going with the Extrait, and this one, of course, it's from BDK Parfums. And it's this right here, Gris Charnel Extrait. The Extrait, of course, I have the Eau de Parfum too, which I'm also very familiar with. I've had, this is my 3rd bottle of the Eau de Parfum, and this is actually my 2nd full bottle of the Extrait. So it's a fragrance that I'm very familiar with. Could honestly choose either. I mean, in this list, they're both very similar. I think a lot of people consider this a kind of fig tea fragrance, a darker fig tea fragrance. kind of a little bit of a melancholy feel to it as well. It definitely has a heavier vibe than the Eau de Parfum does. Iris is another note in this that plays a good amount of a role. I would even say other notes of interest are sandalwood, a good amount of woodiness here, tonka bean, vanilla, and cardamom too. There's a little bit of a spice here, but actually for me, this is kind of a sweetened, darkened, irisy fragrance. And yeah, a tea fragrance for me. The fig in this, I'm a huge fan of fig. This doesn't come across as a green, milky fig really at all. Fig fragrance nonetheless, a darker one, a little bit more of a sweeter one. The iris to me stands out more in the extrait than it does in the Eau de Parfum. Really the differences between the two are kind of negligible. I would say the extrait's a little bit more grown up, but really you're splitting hairs. I could include either one of them in this list, but the extrait gets it this time. I would say the Eau de Parfum might sneak into a spring fragrance top 10. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the Eau de Parfum make it into my top spring list if I were a betting man. But there you have it. That is Grise Charnel, the extrait version in this list. And we're gonna go from that to probably my favorite fragrance from Argos, and it is this one right here. It is Danae. Danae is a very, very interesting fragrance for me. It's all about the woodsy notes. You've got sandalwood, cedar, you've got gaiac wood, and you've got cashmere wood. So there's a lot of different woodsy notes in this fragrance, but you smell this one, and your average person is not gonna smell this and think like you smell like the lumber section of Home Depot or anything like that. So don't think, with all the woodsy notes in this fragrance and me even describing it as a woodsy heavy fragrance, that it's gonna come across as smelling like that. Not at all, actually. There's a good amount of creaminess in this one, a musky patchouli vibe as well. It opens citrus heavy even, and it kind of has a little bit of a warmth to it. I've actually worn this before as my scent of the day, and I had somebody tell me that I smelled like Scentsy, like I was melting Scentsy wax, not inside my house, outside of my house, even hours after having put this on. I can see what somebody would mean by that. And there's always a likelihood that I was in fact melting Scentsy that day. But honestly, it's about this fragrance, and that's what it was about. It's actually got a really nice sillage to it. Projects very well, lasts a long time. I think it's an Eau de Parfum. Yeah, this one is an Eau de Parfum, but I've mentioned this before that I feel like Argos as a house kind of behaves like extraits anyway. They have that kind of heaviness to them. But yeah, this one's, I got a good amount of that creamy citrus in the opening. Kind of reminds me of the Chanel Allure Homme line. That kind of citrus, that kind of creaminess, that kind of muskiness. Reminds me of it to a degree, a little bit. There's a nice coziness to this one. Argos Danae, love this one. My favorite from the house in my winter top 10 for 2024. And then we're gonna go from that one to a couple of designers, one that I really have never talked about on this channel. And it's this one right here from Issey Miyake. It's Nude d'Issey Noir Argent. And this, I think this might be discontinued. Don't quote me on that. It kind of has the ear markings of being discontinued though. In the community, prices are really starting to skyrocket. It's getting harder to find it at discounters. This is one of my favorites, if not my favorite, from Issey Miyake. Now, I know a lot of people talk about Pulse of the Night as being the head turner, being the fragrance to own from Issey Miyake, but I would actually consider this one, Noir Argent, to be the one to own, the one you want to pick up before prices get astronomical, at least. Now, for me, this is a very kind of designer-esque, I would say, leathery fragrance. A good amount of spiciness in this one as well, and a good amount of smokiness here too, from myrrh, labdanum, and olibanum. That trifecta of notes, and also the spiciness in this as well, nutmeg, black pepper, pink pepper, This has a really dark edge to it. Even though I would say there's a good amount of a designer feel to this, a sweet kind of playful feel to it, it's really still surrounded by a lot of darker, heavier, smoky, spicy notes. Love you, Noir Argent, and I have not talked about you near enough, and I have not even worn this one yet this winter season. Normally, I try to pull this one out towards the end of December and maybe even early January. Haven't touched this one yet. It deserves to get a good amount of wearing during this time of year. Love that one from Issey Miyake. And from that one, let's go to another designer and a fragrance that I included in the list of my best fragrance releases for 2023. And it's this one from Ralph Lauren. It is Ralph's Club Elixir. Yeah, the Elixir version. I kind of sat down with that list of 2023 fragrances and thought, okay, are there any here that I want to put in my winter top 10? And there were actually a few, and I didn't want to overload the list with new 2023 fragrances. So I thought, okay, which one that I really feel comfortable about putting in a winter list that I really could say to myself, I think that actually deserves to make it. And yeah, this is the one that I came up with surprisingly. I mean, smelling this one out of the atomizer, it's like you're walking into a mall. Yeah, that kind of smell, walking into a Macy's, a Dillard's, a Sephora. That smell of men's cologne in the air, but that only tells half the story, if that. And like Noir Argent, as far as that designer feel of the fragrance, this also uses a good amount of smokiness in it as well. From the note of olibanum. So the olibanum is kind of warming things up here. There's a good amount of an iris/orris feel to this fragrance as well. Very unique, combining it with that mass appeal designer style trend that we're going through right now. There's a lot of comparisons of fragrances in this genre that this gets compared to on Fragrantica, but not an overwhelming amount for any of them. So it's really just kind of reminding people of numerous things, but not really reminding anybody of one exact thing. Lavender, cardamom, leather, and patchouli are some other notes of interest in this one. The smokiness with that iris really makes it stand out. Love this one from Ralph Lauren. That is Ralph's Club Elixir. And the next one we're gonna go with is a fragrance I talked about here recently in my weekly wrap-up video. This one is from Tom Ford. It is Effing Fabulous. Of course, this was my New Year's Day scent of the day for 2024. And since I've already talked about this one in a good amount of detail here recently, I won't go into it too much. But this one is kind of centered around that powdery almond feel to it, leather and tonka bean as well. So those combinations is what this fragrance is all about. I could not have a winter top 10 without this one from Tom Ford. There were actually numerous fragrances from Tom Ford that I felt like deserved to be in a winter top 10 list, but that's Tom Ford's Effing Fabulous. Their best for the cold winter months. And the next one we're gonna go with is an oldie but a goodie, and one that has been in my top 10 winter fragrance list for a very long time now. I think this might be the last year I'm gonna include it in my winter top 10. Starting next year, I'll probably retire it from this list, but it's this one right here from Valentino. It is the original Uomo. And a lot of people consider this a very designer mass appeal coffee fragrance, and yeah, it is. I would agree with them. Really no way not to agree with that, with notes of hazelnut and roasted coffee and chocolate and leather and kind of a little bit of a latte feel to this one, maybe even some vanilla, some sweet vanilla or tonka bean thrown in there. Yeah, it's a coffee fragrance. Not what you're thinking of, directly smelling like coffee, not your most authentic coffee by any means. I would probably consider it pretty close to something like this right here, along the lines of Bath & Body Works Coffee and Whiskey, or maybe even Rojas Man, something along those lines, a little bit more gourmand feeling, a little bit maybe even foodie feeling. The hazelnut and the chocolate here do definitely give this kind of a whipped chocolate feel. Also, that little bit of that vanilla and tonka bean sweetness to it as well. That leather touch, I would say, it's not a real strong leather fragrance by any means. It just kind of dresses it up a little bit. It gives it a little bit of a pizzazz. I mean, just something extra thrown in with those foodie notes. Love this one. I think this is gonna be the last year this one makes it into my top 10. I'm not gonna dance around it. This deserves to be in a top 10 list. It's just been in my top 10 for the winter season for so long. I feel like I'm gonna kind of move some new things into the list as we go forward next year. But that's Valentino Uomo. Okay, now we're into the meat and potatoes of this top 10 for the winter season. And we're gonna do this, count it down from 3 to 1. And we're gonna start off with this one right here from Prada. That is Prada L'Homme Intense. Now, this is a leather fragrance, or at least leather is one of the more dominant notes in this fragrance, but it's also an iris fragrance too. So you're taking the original DNA from Prada L'Homme, that soapy, very mass appealing, very easy to wear, clean style fragrance, and you're adding some leather, some darker notes, some heavier notes, a little bit of a smokiness to this one as well, some tonka bean. You're just making the fragrance heavier, smokier. And to go along with that iris, that leather, that tonka, you've also got some darker notes, some amber, some patchouli, some woodsy sandalwood. Really, you're just taking the original DNA and you're dressing it up. I mean, kind of similar to what we've done before with some of these other fragrances, taking very similar DNAs and we're just making them darker and heavier. And that's what this one does. That real clean kind of soapy iris that Prada is known for throughout their house. That's what this is. It's just a darker version of that. And I would say with all of the iris fragrances that are out there right now, you know the list of them. There's many to choose from. Dior Homme, that entire line, Dior Homme Intense, Givenchy Gentleman Eau de Parfum, Valentino Uomo, Givenchy's Gentleman Reserve Privé, all of those, you take all of them. This is the one that I would put in this top 10 with that style of iris, that waxy makeup-y iris. This is my absolute favorite for the winter season. That is Prada L'Homme Intense. And now we're going to number 2. This one right here, I talked about it, I wanna say in my last video, and I said, don't be surprised if you see this one in my top 10 winter fragrances for 2024. It's this one right here from Parfums de Marly. It is Carlisle. How could I not include this in a winter top 10? It's just an absolutely stunning fragrance. Oh, that's good. That's good. Vanilla, patchouli, almost a sweet tobacco-y feel to it. Oud even, a very easygoing oud. Another fragrance I could have included from Parfums de Marly is Waljean. A fragrance that is very much unlike this, but still a fragrance that has a lot of heavier notes that is perfect for this time of year. Waljean, could have included it in this winter top 10. Even Haultain would have been perfect for this winter list as well. But for me, Carlisle is one that I really go back with for several years now. A few of these, I go back many years now. I'll probably start new next year with a brand new top 10. I've got so many deserving fragrances that could be in a winter top 10. But Carlisle, it's so good to see you. And I've been wearing this one quite a bit here lately, which is a surprise for me somewhat because I haven't worn this fragrance on a regular basis, at least for many years now. I think Carlisle's kind of taken a back seat for me, even though it's always been one of those fragrances for me that has been at the very top of its genre. And I'm glad to be back wearing it again and wearing it more and actually revisiting it now after a few years off without it. I mean, it's patchouli, it's vanilla, it's tonka bean, it's nutmeg, it's apple. It's even got a little small tinge of a little bit of a rose in it as well. Some woodsy notes too. I've said, yeah, this kind of smells like a little bit, and I've been told in the past that has a little bit of a sweet tobacco vibe to it as well. The woodsiness in this kind of smells damp and darkened a little bit. That's Carlisle Parfums de Marly at number 2 in this list. And now we're gonna go to number 1 for my top fragrance, my top winter fragrance for 2024. And it is none other than this one right here from Yves Saint Laurent. That is 6th place Saint Sulpice. What can I say about this fragrance right here? I mean, of all the leather fragrances that I own, and I own many, and there's actually many in this list that have the note of leather that's either a dominant leather or one of the dominant notes in the fragrance. This is my absolute favorite leather fragrance. I mean, it's a masterpiece for me, and you know, I know a lot of people will kind of cringe at it being in this list and it being so high because it is such an expensive fragrance, and it is really hard to get your hands on right now. I don't know if it's discontinued or if it's just out of stock and it's going to be restocked at some point. So having said that, I'm gonna put that aside and I'm just gonna base it on the fragrance itself, and it is an amazing fragrance for me. The leather, the tonka bean, the saffron, the lavender, the labdanum, all of it, you combine it all. It's an amazing fragrance. Don't want to throw anybody off with all those notes at once. This comes down to being a darker, fresher, heavier, very mass appealing leather and tonka bean fragrance. The labdanum, I mean, yeah, it's a noticeable fragrance. No, it kind of smokes it up just ever so slightly. Not near anything the smokiness that we have in Noir Argent or Ralph's Club Elixir, or even the smokiness in Prada L'Homme Intense. Not that kind of smokiness. This is still a very overwhelmingly pleasing, appealing DNA, mass appealing DNA. It just has a good amount of leather in it, and that leather steals the show, and it is top of the line for me as far as leather fragrances go. That is the Yves Saint Laurent 6th place Saint Sulpice as my number 1 fragrance for my winter top 10 in 2024. There you guys have it. I think I'm gonna kind of start fresh next year in 2025 and just start from the ground up. For the winter season, I mean, I did 15 vanilla and amber fragrances. I did another 10 here that did not center around vanilla and amber. So that's 25 total. I mean, that's a lot of fragrances to choose from one season. So there, you got your pick. Watch either video, whether you want a vanilla and amber or whether you want something a little bit darker and smokier, and maybe an iris or even a lavender or a leather fragrance. I've got it all out of those 2 videos to choose from. So yeah, I think the next video you guys are gonna see from me is gonna be my weekly wrap-up video here at the end of the week, maybe on Monday. I mean, we're having some bad weather moving in right now, so hopefully I can get that uploaded here pretty soon. I'm gonna upload this one tonight as I'm filming this tonight. So yeah, there you guys have it. That's my winter top 10 for 2024. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll talk to you soon. See you.